All right. So one of my favorite dimensions of this type of content is getting into a little bit of the inside baseball and into the weeds and cutting through the clutter of really exciting questions that can be answered through enterprise AI enabled solutions. But talking, publicly, openly about some of the types of questions that should be on the mind of the operators in particular to help them see around corners that perhaps they might not see around because they don't have, quote unquote, the technical quotient or what have you, even though they have got partners and so on and so forth that can help them. But Tati, I wonder if someone were to walk into your world and say, hey, I'm so excited, I'm going to deploy some enterprise AI to create this whiz-bang customer experience. It's going to be unbelievable, this, that, the other thing. And they're talking about all the upside and all the promise. What are the types of questions that you would say to your friend, have you thought about this? Have you stress tested this? Because I think that's what folks would love to hear from you on this front, because it can be difficult to not get super excited about the promise. But what kind of questions would you suggest folks think about?
Yeah, this is from the series, the things I thought I wish I knew back when.
Yeah.
And it's always, and that's one thing, right? Getting excited about AI, just like with anything else. There's a lot of folks out there, just like it was with so many other technologies that we won't list, but the silver bullet, right? And you know how averse I am to the silver bullet. Well, that will be my first red flag when someone is coming in only with benefits, only with this is easy, this is great. And yes, this is all really great, but there are things. So I'm going to share a few things and a few thoughts that folks should have in their minds as they are. And I'm happy to share this in written form so it becomes a really easy checklist to say, all right, if I'm speaking with someone trying to sell me something, what are some of the things I should be asking? So from a strategic side, integration complexity. We're talking about the seamlessness of the ability to be seamless that these AI agents have, but it doesn't mean that every single agent and from every single company that's trying to sell to you is going to be seamless. And I don't even know what your systems are. So number one red flag, by the way, is if they're not asking you too many questions about your business. They should be inundating you with questions about your business. And I would say something that's highly controversial, because I know this so well, that the teams out there are stretched, are working on so many projects and so many things. You cannot hire a third party to do this work for you. Your team has to be involved. And what I mean by that is, yes, you can hire the third party. Yes, you can have the service, but your team there needs to be a portion of your team, a key task force that is truly involved in this. Anyone that tells you different is selling you snake oil. Period. So integration complexity, the ROI timeline. I see so much out there. And as someone who advises a project of modular tools myself, full disclosure, I'm always speaking to the team like, if you're coming to me with ROI timelines, yes, you can have some suggested timelines. You can talk about what you've seen happen out there and what some of the other experiences you have. But in order for me to tell you, Alec, this is going to happen in your company and what will be the return. So beware of folks telling you that's going to be an X amount percentage in X amount of days without knowing anything about your business. You need to build. And by the way, talking about that, our friends, the CFOs out there that are investing in this, if you don't have the appropriate ROI timeline built in, you're going to turn them off to your next investment. So, that's something to be really smart about. The operational dependencies, like how do you reframe, rebuild, re-engineer your processes, your operational processes around this, which is tied to also some of the leadership side and talent transformation, as I call it, which is, will these tools change? And they will, by the way, the spoiler alert, will they fundamentally change the skill sets that you need in your teams? And how do you work? So that's got to be a parallel work stream to figure that out, right? The evolution of the management team as well goes right along with it. The other question is around change management, right? How do you which is something that's very delicate right now. How do you bring your teams along? How, and can they be the ones that will support you there, or you're going to have to figure this out in a different way? How do you bring the teams along without having the perception that they're being replaced by AI, or that human judgment, worse, is being replaced, and this is really just the start of a workforce reduction? So that's a really big one. So again, kind of grill those folks that are bringing you those tools, because they got to be able to, or they also got to be able to very openly say, listen, that's not what I sell, that's not my expertise, but either here's someone that you're gonna have to be able to get that support and that expertise elsewhere. Then you have risk considerations. You have to ask the key questions I'll ask around that is, sounds obvious, but I also think a lot of folks are unclear on how to pry around data security and privacy, governance, dependency, the dependency risk. What's your vulnerability by becoming dependent on this vendor and their capabilities, and what's the contingency if, let's say, they pivot, they go bankrupt, they change their pricing model and we can't afford any longer, right? How do you build all of that? And again, I don't see that often as a top of mind, but I believe it should be. And and finally, the strategic implications, right? So asking real quick, like, yes, you're pitching this to me, but you're also pitching this to my competitors, right? And to others in the industry. If the competitors adopt a similar tool, what's my real competitive advantage here? How long does it last? What does it do for me? What is unique about what we're going to do here? So that's a really big one. And that I would dare say that the majority of folks trying to sell you something will not have an answer for that, and they should. And back to, a little bit of what we're talking about, I will grill them with questions on customer experience consistency. What's the consistency? How does it really work? How does it, and ensure that you're again, they should be asking questions about your customer experience. And I like to see you give me, if you're my vendor, I like to see you give me an example of what your tool is going to do with my process. I can share that process with you. These processes are usually public domain, right? You can come anywhere and have that experience with me. And then lastly, I would say the last one is what are the true costs of this, right? Because that's another thing I hear about. You have the subscription fees and all of that, and it all sounds great, but you have, what's change management, what are change management costs, integration, restructuring? Are there, your upgrades? I've seen companies get into really sticky situations in the past where they have these upgrade costs they didn't budget for. They're enormous. And if you don't upgrade, the tool becomes essentially useless. So those would be the main things and they sound, and I don't think it's quite a few things, but when someone's trying to bring something like that to your company, they should be able to answer that.
I agree. And the only two things I'd add, and they're just derivatives, I think, of what you said. I do think you really want to dig into case studies and tangible results, whether they're in the same vertical, sub-vertical, or, adjacent or what have you. I think really digging into case studies, and you can redact them, obviously, but understanding how real is this case study driven conversation versus the use case driven conversation versus the art of the possible. And there's always a time and place for that. There are different companies with different risk preferences, et cetera, that are okay with some broken glass along the way because they want to be first. They know what happens when you are first. The second thing is, I think you touched on it a couple different times, which I completely agree, is you really want to get into that data infrastructure and data requirements and what is and isn't realistic about the way that these systems need to be fed the gasoline, which is data that goes into the car, which is the engine of the AI system to drive it. Without the data, you don't have an AI strategy. Sorry, full stop. It doesn't work like that. It's like driving a car without gas. Doesn't happen. Unless, of course, it's an EV, but electricity is the equivalent. So, I agree. I like this a lot. And I think these conversations, Tati, are amazing because I think folks are always looking for that independent perspective around what are the 3 or 4 or 5 questions I should be, asking that maybe I'm not considering. So anything else on this front before we wrap this one up? I think this is exciting for people for sure to hear.
I would just add one last comment to your point on data. You want to have partners that can help you. And that was one of the things in getting involved in a project that was really crucial for me was, are these folks that can help me get there, and not just going to say, oh, my tool is amazing. Is your data that's not good? That's why it doesn't work. Right. So this ability you want to be working with someone that is prepared to meet you where you are. And that's, I will say, my very last comment to your point, without the right data, and that's several of the conversations that we're having. And this is not meant to be some code word for super complex things that you can't understand and you can only hire people you pay a lot of money that they will work on your data. These are simple things, and yet they are so many of the companies out there, they're so far behind on that in terms of that, the capture, the health, the hygiene, if you will, of that data, and making sure that it is kept properly. All the safety and security concerns aside, because that's a whole nother bucket of things that you gotta be connected to and pay attention to. But we love data. Maybe the next time we wear T-shirts, you and I, that say we love data.
That's my that's the ultimate nerdville for me. Data infrastructure, knowledge graphs, ontology. It gets crazy. Semantic layers that are informed. I could put everybody to sleep on that. But anyway, thank you, Tati, as always, and let's geek out on data in an upcoming episode for sure.